Hey audio lovers, Graham here from the recordingrevolution.com, and today I want to show you how you can do some drum magic in your DAW of choice with just an EQ and compressor. Now in an ideal world you have great sounding drum recordings, and so you're just going to use these tools to sculpt and shape just a little bit and slightly enhance or balance your drum recordings with the rest of your mix. Today I don't have an ideal situation. I've got some drums that don't sound that great. Take a listen. Tonal issues, sounds muffled, wimpy, just not in your face at all. And this is a hard-hitting song. So I want to show you how I took those drums with a little bit of EQ and compression and turned them into these drums. Right? Before. After. Okay, so what's going on here? The after sound has way more punch, way more depth, way more bottom end, way more clarity, more balanced tone compared to what we started with. Is it perfect? No. Does it sound a little processed? Maybe. But for this genre, and you'll hear it in a second in some context, it does what it needs to do with way more power and way more thwack than before. All you need to really transform drum recordings is EQ and compression. And what we've got is just a lot of specific cuts and tweaks on things. They're just things that shouldn't be in the mix. So I'm just going to show you a quick overview of what I'm doing here. I don't have time to go into every single nuance. I just want to show you what's possible. I've got all the drums running through a drum bus here, okay? And then I've got a channel strip here. It doesn't matter what brand. This is the SSL from Waves, but this is an EQ and a compressor in one. Any channel strip or any EQ plugin or compressor plugin will work. I'll show you a couple versions of compressors and EQs that I'm using. But here's one on the drum bus, meaning all my drums are going through this track. And what I've done on this track, I started here, is to get a little bit of the sound sculpted. So I've taken out some 870. There's something nasty, and you find this by pushing and boosting and sweeping around until you find something that sounds so horrendous. Everything's going to sound extreme when you boost it, but you find the frequencies that sound so horrendous you want to poke your eyeballs out, and that's a good clue that you're in the ballpark of the nastiness, and then you back it off. So I've taken out about 5 dB of 870, and I've done the same thing up here, about 3 dB of 3.5K. Took those frequencies out, there's a good chunk out, and then I did a little lift, a little shelf boost at 8K. That's usually to open up the top end. That's the EQ going on here, and then a little bit of compression to give these drums a little smack. So here's the group channel before and after. Already with one plugin, in this case, an EQ and a compressor and a channel strip, I've cleaned out some of the nastiness and I've opened up the drums a little bit just on one plugin. Okay, now I had to move down to the individual levels, and the real culprit here on this mix are the overheads. Take a listen. Those aren't the overheads you want, okay? Now, part of me wanted to just delete this track entirely, which would have sounded so unnatural, but that's how bad this track was. So what I had to do was some extreme work on this track, okay? Here's an EQ, and you can see what I've got on this curve. I have rolled off everything below 460, so I have a high-pass filter rolling everything below 460. So I'm just taking out all the kick drum and all the snare, really, the beef of the snare. So I'm turning this track into a cymbal track. Okay, I'm just going to have to do that in this case. It's not ideal, but you do what you got to do with the source material you're given. So much of the nastiness in the drum sound came from the low mids on this overhead, so I got rid of them. I also found a frequency around 2.2K. I just sounded nasty, and I carved out 6 dB of that, which is a lot. And then I had to open these overheads up, because remember how muffled they are? That's very muffled sound. Had to open them up with a massive shelf boost at 5.5K, okay, which takes the overheads from this to this. Do you notice the kick drum sounds bigger? That's weird. That's the cool thing about EQ. We haven't done anything to the kick drum yet. We haven't boosted anything on the kick drum. All we've done is gotten rid of the kick drum in the overhead, and now the kick drum that's still playing without any plugins on it sounds way bigger, which is nice. And then of course this overhead has less nastiness, weird frequencies are gone, and it has a more top end and clarity. So we're making some major progress there. That was the huge culprit to me. Then I went back down to the bottom end kick and worked my way back up to just really sculpt this sound. Kick drum by itself is okay, but I had to scoop out some low mids around 500. Also scooped out some 600 and gave it a little bit of compression. So here's a little bit of the help on the kick drum. And of course, I forgot to mention I did a little bit of a bell boost here at 60. So it gave a little bit more beef. Cut to frequencies, little boost and compression. That rounded out the kick drum. It still doesn't give it the power and the weight, but it's rounder, okay? Then on the snare drum, and I'll skip the kick click, you'll see that in a second. Snare drum needed a lot of work here as well. Take a listen to what we did here. We did a cut at about 500, again, a muddy frequency. I actually did a boost at 200, to get more fatness in the snare because I really wanted a fat snare, and this one kind of had that thin, tinny sound. So a little bit of a boost at 200. That was sort of the fundamental fat frequency there, the snare. A massive, massive cut at 890, 900 hertz. I took out 15 dB. It's very extreme. It's not very natural sounding, but this sounds horrible on the snare drum. I had to pull it way, way out. And then a little bit of a crack. I boosted here about 7K to give a little more air on the snare. Of course, a high-pass filter because you don't need anything really below 100 there. And then some substantial compression on the snare drum. So let's see how we can fix this snare a little bit. It's like two different sounds, right? It's mostly because I'm getting rid of this nastiness. That's horrible. So I took out a good chunk of that. That one plugin alone transformed the snare sound, okay? Now let's enhance the kick and the snare some more, and this is where not just EQ and compression, but using parallel processing can help. I've talked about both of these before. The kick click is just a copy of the kick drum with some extreme EQ on this. I've got a massive high pass filter, so I'm rolling off all the low and everything below 350. And then I've got a massive boost where the sort of the snap of the beater was. For me, it sounded cool at 4.5K. So I've boosted 15 dB of that and compressed the crud out of it. All right, so basically I've got a super compressed sound here. Just listen to what's going on here. By itself is just a copy. So then I extreme EQ it. Right? It's just the smack. So then what I'm doing is bringing that sound in alongside the original kick drum. So we'll take a listen to this, the drums with and without this kick click. Right? You feel that kick drum smacking, and you notice this more in small speakers, laptop speakers, iPod, crap studio speakers. That click helps the kick drum smack translate better across more speakers. Snare sizzle, I felt like the snare, as clean as I got it and fatter as I got it, still needed some crack up top. So I just did a copy of the snare drum, much like I did with the kick drum. And then I've got some EQ and compression. So I'm doing a high pass filter, much like the kick click. I rolled off everything below 350, and then I have a massive, massive boost at 6K for some air, okay? So take a listen to this. This is just by itself. Right, it's just the snare. Then I've got some click. It's kind of sizzle. And then I've got a compressor on it to just crank it up. So this is just going to act as some air, some sizzle on the snare drums. So here's the whole drums without the snare sizzle. Say that 12 times fast. Snare sizzle, and then bringing in the snare sizzle track. It's just that air. You need air on the snare, the sound of a snare ringing in the room. So I brought that in. Just you can mix it in as much or little as you want. Toms, just a little bit of EQ on those bad boys, scooping out nastiness around 600, and then giving a little bit of weight. They were kind of thin, so I boosted some weight around 290 for some of these. I think maybe the high tom had 290. And then just some compression, a little bit of a boost also at 5.5K. So the toms have some smack. So let's listen to where these toms were. Let's take this little pass here. Before, after. Right? They just sound a little rounder, a little beefier, more professional. Hi-hat, all you need on this most of the time, guys, is a high-pass filter. Everything below 1,000 hertz, gone. And the final thing that always makes drums pop, even if they already sound good, is some parallel processing on kick and the snare, and in this case also the toms. So sending a copy of kick, snare, toms to another channel where I have some EQ to kind of clean them up because they're kind of nasty. So here they are. Let's get the actual drums here. They were real heavy in the low mid, so I took out some stuff there, cleaned them up, and then add the compression. Here's just the SSL bus comp. Just pop, right? And that you can mix in alongside the natural sounding drums. So we'll take out the parallel drums. Now you hear all the cleaned up drums, and then we'll bring in the final thing I did to the drums here in the parallel drums. Weight, power, right? I've shown you this before. I'm just showing you how powerful this is. On all of that, it's little teeny steps, a lot of steps, more work than I'd like to do on drums. But we took the drums from this, remember, to this. And let me show you why this is not only so important in solo, as you can already hear, but this track has some rockin' guitars and bass, and with the drums the way they were, not cool, right? Here we go. So I'll press play, you'll hear the guitars, bass, drums before, and you'll hear how those drums just don't work with the rest of the band, and then I'll bring in the EQ and compression we did to the drums. way different. Drum magic, people. And the sarcasm here is there is no magic. All we're doing is systematic EQ and compression to just get the sounds we need, the sounds we hear in our heads. That was an extreme example, but hopefully it showed you the power of what you can do with a simple EQ and compressor. If you like these videos, subscribe. Will you do that for me? Subscribe to the videos right now. Just click the button. It's that easy. That way you'll get updates every time a video comes out, and you can stay up to date and take the little tips and tricks that help you, use them right away, and ignore the ones that don't help you. And hey, if you haven't already joined the mailing list over at therecordingrevolution.com, click the button here on the video. You want to do this for two reasons. One, because I'm going to give you free stuff, okay? You've got some awesome free content that you can't get anywhere else, including my ebook that has been changing the way people work in the studio for a long, long time. It's called The #1 Rule of Home Recording. If you haven't read it and implemented the material in this book, then your recordings and mixes are missing out, and you're probably spending too much time and too much frustration on them. This will help you a ton, and it'll save you a ton of money on gear. It's absolutely free. And two, I send exclusive content to my mailing list that I don't put anywhere else. I don't put it on YouTube. I don't put it on the blog, just to your inbox. So if you're not already on the mailing list, you're missing out on that each and every week. I want you to get on that so you get access to my best stuff. Join the mailing list, subscribe to the videos, and let me know with a comment below this video or on the blog if you have done any drum magic lately with EQ and compression, and if you've seen these techniques to prove true in your sessions. Hopefully you don't have anything that's this hard to fix, but I just want to show you what's possible. Have a great day. Make some great music. We'll talk to you later.